Peerless Epiphone casinos. If you're someone who's into Epiphone casinos, you've probably heard this term before. These were made in the Peerless factory in Korea in the 90s, and they've kind of developed legendary status among the history of Epiphone casino models. I managed to get my hands on one. I got one through trade. Now, if you've followed me for a while, you know I've done a lot of videos on Epiphone casinos. In fact, one of my first big videos was a shootout between an Epiphone Elitist casino and an Epiphone Standard casino. So today, I want to put the Peerless casino up against the Standard casino to see if it really is that different. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and I hope you enjoy. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to this kind of shootout. It's really more of an interesting feature piece, I guess, in the sense that I wanted to see what this casino was like and whether or not it really stood up to the other models. And I've owned and played a lot of Epiphone casinos over the years. It's a really great guitar, obviously classic for the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and many others. And they're kind of off the beaten path when it comes to regular guitars. You know, it's like, I know you could easily say like, well, it's basically just a 330, which yeah, it basically is, but at the same time, it's sort of strays to the outskirts of your typical gearheads and things, partially because it's fully hollow. It's actually got a much warmer sound, I think, than people expect, because, you know, when people think like Beatles tones, you tend to think a little bit brighter, but the casino's actually a very warm sounding guitar. So like rather than early Beatles or jangly or even fuzzy Beatles, you know, think of John Lennon's tone on Get Back. That's more of a casino tone. It's a warm, hollow body kind of tone, as opposed to something bright and snappy. There have been loads of casino models over the years. Nowadays, they're made in China. The Elitist line was made in Japan. Now, there's, of course, a USA-made casino, because Epiphone was a long-lasting US company before they eventually got bought out and kind of over time more relegated to like the sub-Gibson brand as a lot of people see them nowadays. You know, they were a high-end archtop builder in the early century. So, you know, these were really, really high-end guitars, and even when the Beatles had them, they were still made at a particularly high level. So, of course, you know, what model, where they're made, this is all big things for people who are into this type of guitar. So again, the standard one now is made in China. It's been made in China for quite a while at this point, but they used to be made in Korea, and I mentioned the other ones. One of the things I will say in general is that, as I've talked about in other videos, things that are made in China are not necessarily cheap or bad. This is a whole rabbit hole that I don't want to fully get into, but really a lot of it depends on what the company asks for. What do they want? Why are they having it made in China? And the unfortunate reality is usually they're having it made in China because they can get cheaper labor and they don't care as much about it being a quality product. It's not a reflection on the ability of the workers to make something great. It's a reflection of them doing what is asked of them, right? So one of the things that I think has been to Epiphone's benefit is that Epiphone has always seemed, at least in my experience, to put a little bit more into some of their classic line guitars. I've played a lot of Epiphones. Many of them had quality control issues, but rarely ever have the ones with quality control issues been things like the Casino or the Sheridan or something that was actually an Epiphone guitar separate from the Gibson line, as opposed to like an Epiphone Les Paul or an Epiphone 335. And again, I know that the Casino was like a 330, but bear with me. I think they've always kind of kept those up to snuff in a lot of ways. And I think this video, in some ways, points that out, because the reality is the Peerless one, it's a fine guitar. It's not really that much better. It's not that much better than the Chinese Casino that is my standard that I've had for a long time. Now, it's important to mention this is where I was kind of saying it's not really a shootout, because this is not a modern Epiphone standard Casino. This one was made in, I want to say, 2011. They are different now. Also, I had to get the pickups replaced in this one. They did come from another Epiphone Casino. It basically sounds like it's always sounded. It's actually a little bit darker now with these other pickups in it than the ones that it came with. But my point is that it's not, the point of the shootout is not to give you an exact tonal comparison between two unique models. It's basically to look at whether or not the Peerless one is really a step above the rest. I will say the build quality is noticeably better. You know, my standard one, it's had some buzzing at times and typical things that the Casinos go through, and the inlays weren't cut the best on it and everything. That being said, I actually prefer the neck shape on the standard, which is a little fatter. The Peerless Casino one is kind of a slimmer taper neck. That's obviously a personal preference thing as opposed to a quality thing. But as someone who owns an Elitist, I own the Standard, I now own the Peerless, I have owned the Warren, I have owned the Coupes, I've played all kinds of them. They're all mostly on par with each other, if we're being totally honest. The Elitist, for instance, it uses a much nicer quality wood, particularly on the back, and you can tell like the fretwork and the neck is a little bit better. But when it comes to tone, playability, they've all been relatively close to each other. So in that sense, the Peerless was actually a little disappointing. And not that it's a bad guitar, just in the sense that it's kind of like, you see these go for a lot more money than a used standard Casino, and it's really not that much better. And my apologies to anyone who's trying to unload a Peerless Casino right now, because my intention is not to ding the price on, anyone. Of course, obviously part of this is collectability. That's a big thing that goes into it. But I do want to give you a fair shake on it and play them back to back. So we are going to play them back to back on all the pickup settings. Today I'm going into the Fender Super Reverb. And for my overdriven tones, I'm using a Vic Audio Mount Pleasant, which is a blues breaker. So that's what I got. Let us know what you think in the comments. Do you own a Peerless casino? Have you heard the hype about them? Have you heard the kind of legendary status of the Peerless casinos? Do you own a standard? Do you own an elitist? Do you own a USA model? I actually have not gotten to try the USA model yet. It's kind of something that's kind of disappointed me. The opportunity hasn't come up yet, but I would really like to play one of the USA casinos. But let us know what you think in the comments. I'm Jack Fossett. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.